It wasn't much, but it would have to do. She glanced at the envelope in her pocket, feeling its weight. $20. That was all she'd get for ruining a date she didn't even know existed. Her stomach twisted with a mixture of nerves and guilt. She wasn't a bad person, not really, but money had a way of bending even the firmest lines. Rent was overdue, groceries were sparse, and her little brother needed a new pair of shoes. $20 could buy a few essentials, maybe keep her from being late on the electricity bill. She took a deep breath and rehearsed her role. Charm, distraction, subtle sabotage, simple, easy. But as she walked toward the upscale restaurant where the blind date was scheduled, a small part of her hoped that she wouldn't have to go through with it. A whisper of conscience told her that this plan, however small, could hurt someone in ways she hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander Hayes, billionaire CEO of Hayward Enterprises, was reviewing contracts in his sleek penthouse office. The city lights glittered below like a carpet of diamonds, reflecting the empire he had built from scratch. Success was his companion, wealth his shield, but loneliness had a way of slipping in through the cracks he never thought he had. Alexander had everything money could buy: cars, penthouses, private jets. But tonight, as he prepared for a blind date set up by a well-meaning friend, he felt the familiar pang of uncertainty. People saw the millionaire, the confident CEO, the man who always had a plan. But inside, Alexander was vulnerable. He longed for connection, for someone who could see past the polished exterior and understand the man behind the wealth. His friend had promised her, a young woman, intelligent, kind, and refreshingly unpretentious. Alexander wasn't sure if he believed in blind dates anymore, but hope, however small, still lingered. He ran a hand through his hair, straightened his jacket, and wondered, could someone actually see him for who he was? Or would they see only the empire he controlled? Olivia arrived at the restaurant early, scanning the elegantly lit space. Couples chatted over candlelight dinners, laughter mingling with soft music. Her eyes darted around, searching for her target, the blind date she was supposed to disrupt. Her heart raced. She wasn't used to situations like this, and even with her plan, she felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that money and necessity had never forced her to be before. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and reminded herself of her goal. $20. Keep it simple. Distract. Confuse. Sabotage. She couldn't fail. Not now. Alexander arrived shortly after, stepping into the restaurant with the confidence of a man who commanded boardrooms but the hesitation of someone about to step into the unknown. He scanned the room and then, she was there. Olivia. The moment he saw her, something unexpected happened. His usual analytical mind faltered. There was a spark in her eyes, a fire in her stance, a mixture of defiance and vulnerability he couldn't quite place. She wasn't polished in the way socialites were, she wasn't rehearsed or perfectly styled. She was real. He found himself drawn to her immediately, curiosity and admiration mingling with an unexplainable pull. Something in the way she carried herself, in the subtle nervous energy around her, made him pause. And she, momentarily forgetting her mission, felt her chest tighten when their eyes met. They sat down across from each other, a polite but charged silence hanging in the air. Olivia fiddled with her napkin, stealing glances at him. Alexander watched her subtly, noticing the way she seemed both cautious and strong, aware of her surroundings yet unafraid. "So," Alexander began, his voice calm and warm, "I'm told you're interesting." Olivia blinked, startled, and then smiled faintly. "Interesting," she echoed. "That's one way to put it." He chuckled, a rich, genuine sound that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. "Yes. And I hope it's the right kind of interesting," he said, eyes twinkling. Her pulse quickened. The words were simple, but there was a sincerity behind them, a recognition of her presence that she hadn't expected. She had come here to create chaos, to follow the instructions in the envelope, but instead, she felt something shift. Something she hadn't anticipated: curiosity. And perhaps, attraction. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Alexander was intrigued by her perspectives, her humor, her quiet strength. Olivia, in turn, found herself fascinated by his insight, his humility beneath the billionaire exterior, and the way he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, not just the answers she gave. Her plan, simple sabotage, began to crumble. Every laugh, every subtle glance, every shared anecdote chipped away at the resolve she had brought with her. Alexander wasn't just another mark, he was someone real. Someone worth more than $20 and a fleeting scheme. At the end of the evening, as they stood to leave, Alexander offered his hand, a subtle gesture loaded with warmth and invitation. Olivia hesitated, her mission and conscience warring silently. But the pull she felt toward him, the unexpected, undeniable attraction, won. She took his hand. And in that brief touch, everything changed. $20, plans, doubts, they all faded. For the first time, Olivia considered the possibility that she wasn't here to ruin a date at all. Maybe she was here to discover something far greater: connection, trust, and perhaps even love. Have you ever met someone unexpectedly who made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself or your plans? Share your story below. The following weekend, Alexander had suggested a casual walk through the botanical gardens, his attempt to get to know Olivia beyond the confines of the restaurant. She agreed, telling herself it was just reconnaissance, a way to stay on mission while keeping the $20 goal intact. But the moment she stepped onto the cobblestone path, surrounded by blooming flowers and the hum of life, she felt something unexpected stir: curiosity, awe, and a surprising sense of comfort. Alexander walked beside her, hands casually tucked in his pockets, exuding confidence but also a warmth that made her chest tighten. "I didn't know the city had a place like this," Olivia admitted, glancing around. The scent of roses mixed with fresh earth and sunlight, creating a serene cocoon far removed from a hum of traffic and crowded streets. He smiled, a quiet, knowing expression. "It's one of my favorite escapes," he said. "A place where I can think without interruptions, and sometimes meet someone interesting." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. The words were innocent enough, but the way he looked at her, with genuine interest, not scrutiny, made her uneasy. She reminded herself, $20, mission, stay focused. But as she looked into his eyes, warm and curious, her resolve wavered. They strolled along winding paths lined with vibrant flowers and ancient trees. Birds chirped in the distance, and the soft murmur of a fountain added a gentle rhythm to their walk. Conversation flowed effortlessly, as if they had known each other far longer than a single evening. "You know," Alexander said thoughtfully, "I usually meet people who either want something from me or are intimidated by what I have. But you're neither. You're genuine." Olivia swallowed hard, her cheeks warming. I try to be. Life's taught me that sincerity is rare, but it matters. People notice when you care, even if they don't always say it." He glanced at her, surprised by the depth in her voice. There was a strength there, yes, but also vulnerability, a story she hadn't told yet. Alexander felt a pull he didn't fully understand, a magnetic curiosity that reached beyond appearances or societal roles. For Olivia, the longer she walked with him, the more she noticed small details that made her heart twist unexpectedly. The way he listened intently, the subtle tilt of his head when he laughed, the way his eyes softened when he caught her gaze. Each observation chipped away at the distance she had intended to maintain. They reached a secluded bench near a lily pond. Alexander gestured toward it. "Sit for a moment." Olivia hesitated, reminded of the mission, of the envelope burning a hole in her pocket. She could sabotage him here, divert attention, make a misstep that would fulfill her task. But she sat anyway, curiosity and an unexplainable draw winning over logic. They watched the water ripple, goldfish darting beneath the surface. Silence fell between them, not awkward but charged, filled with unspoken words, tension, and the thrill of something new. Finally, Alexander spoke, voice soft, hesitant. "I have to be honest. I wasn't sure about this blind date at first. I thought, maybe it wouldn't lead anywhere. But sitting here with you, I feel something I didn't expect. Olivia felt her heart lurch. Something she hadn't anticipated either, the weight of honesty, the spark of vulnerability. She forced a casual tone, careful not to reveal too much. Something unexpected can be good, she said lightly, though her voice trembled slightly. He looked at her intently. Yes, it can be. Sometimes it shakes you in a way that makes you realize what really matters. The words sank in, echoing in her chest. What mattered? For Olivia, it was survival, rent, groceries, and the small comforts she could afford. But sitting here, watching the genuine, unguarded man beside her, she felt a different tug, one of connection, curiosity, and maybe, affection. A sudden gust of wind carried petals from a nearby tree, brushing across their faces. Olivia laughed, startled, and Alexander joined her, his laughter rich and sincere. The sound felt like a balm, an unexpected warmth that softened the edges of her carefully constructed plan. I think, Alexander said, still smiling, we're starting this evening in the wrong way. We're supposed to be learning about each other, but I feel like I'm learning about myself too. Olivia tilted her head, intrigued. About yourself? Yes, he said quietly. I realize that I've built walls around myself, success, wealth, control, but maybe I need someone to help me tear them down. Her heart fluttered. She knew in that moment that her mission had shifted. The $20 in her pocket suddenly felt irrelevant, meaningless compared to the raw honesty in his voice, the vulnerability he dared to show. And for the first time, she considered that maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to ruin this. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in pink and gold, they walked back toward the city streets. Side by side, neither wanted to break the fragile rhythm between them. Olivia kept thinking about the envelope in her pocket, the simple instructions that had brought her here, and the way her heart had betrayed her own plan. Alexander, too, was lost in thought, realizing that the woman beside him, unassuming, clever, vulnerable, brave, had already captivated him. He didn't know how or when it had happened, but he couldn't ignore the way his pulse quickened, the way he found himself studying her expressions, the way her laughter lingered in his mind long after she had stopped. And in that quiet realization, a new unspoken truth emerged. The mission had failed, not because of negligence, but because something stronger had taken its place. Connection, attraction, and a spark neither could deny. The next morning, Olivia woke to the muted gray light of the city seeping through her blinds. Her phone buzzed with messages from her little brother, reminders of bills, and an unpaid rent notice she hadn't forgotten. And then there was Alexander. She hadn't replied to his texts yet, partly because she didn't know what to say, partly because guilt twisted in her stomach. Her mission, the $20, the sabotage, was still technically in play. Yet, the walk through the gardens, the laughter, the way he had looked at her, it had left an indelible mark. She didn't want to ruin him, and more than that, she didn't want to lose herself in the deception. But fear whispered that if she let herself get too close, heartbreak or discovery would follow. Alexander, on the other hand, tried to return to his routine. He reviewed quarterly reports, held conference calls, and oversaw company operations with the precision of a man accustomed to control. Yet, despite every distraction, his mind kept drifting back to Olivia. Her laugh, the sincerity in her eyes, the way she had listened, really listened, stuck in his thoughts like a melody he couldn't shake. And yet, doubt gnawed at him. She was charming, witty, and undeniably captivating, but how much of that charm was genuine, and how much was part of some scheme? Alexander had spent his life trusting his instincts, but for the first time, he found himself questioning them. Was it possible to fall for someone who was there for the wrong reasons? The evening came, and Olivia forced herself to attend a casual networking dinner with friends. She smiled, laughed, and engaged in conversation, but her thoughts kept returning to Alexander. She wanted to tell him the truth, to confess the absurdity of her assignment and the $20 plan, but the words stuck in her throat. Pride and fear held her back. Fear of rejection, fear of shame, and fear of disrupting the delicate connection that had begun to form. Meanwhile, Alexander attended the same dinner. He spotted Olivia across the room, leaning against a pillar, laughing softly with friends. His chest tightened. She was captivating, radiant in her simplicity, and entirely out of reach. He wanted to speak to her, to bridge the distance, but hesitation held him hostage. The journalist instinct, the lingering doubt from past betrayals in life and business, whispered caution. He wanted to protect himself, even from something that felt undeniably right. Days passed in a fragile dance of near misses and silences. Olivia avoided initiating contact, fearing she might reveal too much, but secretly checked his social media, curious about him. Alexander, in turn, tried to focus on work, yet each mention of her name, each memory of her laugh, sent his mind spiraling. They were drawn to each other, yet both resisted, each holding onto walls built from fear, pride, and uncertainty. Olivia confided in her friend Mia, who had helped her navigate tight spots before. "I can't stop thinking about him," Olivia admitted, twirling a strand of hair nervously. "But I don't know how to tell him the truth. I came here to mess up his date. $20. That's the plan. But now, I don't want to." Mia tilted her head, studying her friend. "Then don't sabotage him. Don't lie to yourself either. You're allowed to feel more than the plan you were given. That's not weakness, that's being human." Olivia sighed, conflicted. The truth felt like a trap, yet a necessary one. She couldn't allow her past motives to define the possibility of a real connection. But courage was hard to summon, especially when money and survival had always dictated her choices. Alexander faced his own internal struggle. During a late-night board meeting, he excused himself and went up to his office balcony. The city sprawled beneath him, lights like stars, quiet and endless. He replayed their garden walk, her soft laugh, the way she had challenged his assumptions without knowing it. He recognized the irony. He, a man used to controlling outcomes, found himself powerless in the face of his own emotions. Pride and caution urged him to hold back, to protect his heart from potential disappointment. But the more he resisted, the clearer it became that his feelings were real, undeniable, and growing stronger. One evening, Alexander sent a simple text. "Coffee tomorrow? No agendas, just conversation." Olivia stared at the message, stomach fluttering. She wanted to respond immediately, but fear again held her back. What if she revealed her secret too soon? What if he judged her? What if she sabotaged herself before she even had a chance? She put down her phone and whispered to herself, "I have to figure this out, before I ruin everything." The next day, they met at a quiet cafe, tension palpable between them. Conversation was polite, but careful. Every glance, every word carried subtext, a subtle negotiation of trust and restraint. Alexander noticed her hesitation and tried to mask his frustration, while Olivia struggled with the weight of the secret she carried. Neither wanted to admit the truth, yet both longed to bridge the gap. Moments of genuine connection flared, shared laughter, a light touch on the arm, a fleeting glance, but each ended with a retreat, a reminder of the walls that fear had built. Alexander finally broke the silence. "Olivia, I feel like there's something you're not telling me," he said gently, leaning forward. Olivia's chest tightened. How could she reveal the truth without destroying what had begun? She forced a smile, her heart aching. "I'm complicated," she admitted, vague enough to hide the secret, but honest enough to hint at depth. The words were small, yet they carried the weight of unspoken truths. Both felt the tension, the magnetic pull, and the growing ache of resisting what they desperately wanted. The following weekend, a company gala brought Olivia and Alexander together in a setting neither had expected, formal, glamorous, and buzzing with chatter. Olivia had been invited under the guise of networking experience, while Alexander had to attend for business, schmoozing investors and clients. The moment Olivia arrived, she realized escaping or hiding was impossible. The gala was crowded, loud, and everyone seemed to notice her. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she scanned the room, instinctively searching for an exit. But then, Alexander appeared. He approached her with a warm, confident smile that made her knees almost buckle. "You look stunning," he said softly, offering his arm. Olivia hesitated but took it, realizing that physically separating herself was no longer an option. The crowded room forced them together, and with every step, the proximity amplified emotions she hadn't dared to acknowledge fully. As they navigated the gala, she felt herself relaxing slightly, the forced closeness acting as both shield and mirror. She noticed subtle things, the way he adjusted his cufflinks with calm precision, how he introduced her to investors with genuine pride, and the soft attentiveness in his eyes whenever she spoke. Alexander, in turn, was acutely aware of her presence. Every time she laughed, the sound cut through the background noise. Every brush of her arm against his ignited sparks he couldn't ignore. He realized that the forced proximity wasn't a trap, it was a revelation. Being near her, even amidst the chaos of the gala, revealed the undeniable connection they had begun to form. Midway through the evening, a sudden commotion near the buffet created a minor spill. Drinks overturned, a waiter flustered. Without thinking, Alexander stepped forward, guiding Olivia to a quieter corner of the room. Their hands brushed, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Olivia's chest tightened, the warmth of his hand felt electric, and she struggled to focus on the conversation around them. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, eyes scanning her face for any sign of distress. She nodded, heart hammering. "Yes, thanks." She could feel the tension between them, the invisible thread of attraction, urgency, and suppressed emotion. Being forced into proximity stripped away the pretense and left them raw, exposed, and hyper-aware of one another. Later, during a quieter moment on the balcony, Alexander leaned against the railing, the city lights twinkling below. Olivia stood beside him, unsure of whether she wanted to talk or simply soak in the moment. The air was charged, the gentle wind carrying both the scent of the city and the intensity of unspoken desire. "Do you ever feel," Alexander began hesitantly, "that life pushes you into moments you're not ready for? Moments where you're forced to confront things you've been avoiding?" Olivia turned toward him, studying his face. "Yes," she admitted softly. "Sometimes the circumstances are unavoidable, and you're forced to see things clearly, even if it's uncomfortable." He smiled faintly, looking down at his hands. "I feel that, right now. Being near you, it's impossible to ignore what I feel." Her heart skipped. She had known this moment would come, the collision of mission, emotion, and truth, but feeling it so intensely in close proximity was almost overwhelming. Her resolve wavered, the envelope in her pocket, the sabotage plan, all seemed trivial now. As the evening drew on, they found themselves repeatedly in situations that kept them physically close, navigating crowded tables, standing side by side during speeches, sharing a ride back in Alexander's sleek car due to a sudden downpour. Each forced moment intensified their awareness of one another. Olivia caught herself stealing glances, noticing the subtle ways he moved, the careful attentiveness in his posture, and the quiet way he listened when she spoke. Every shared smile, every laugh, every gentle touch seemed magnified. She felt emotions stirring she hadn't intended, feelings that conflicted with her mission but felt impossibly real. Alexander, too, struggled. He tried to remain composed, but the proximity, her warmth, the sound of her laughter, the way her eyes lit up, made it increasingly difficult to maintain distance. The closer they were, the more he realized that he had no desire to step back. He wanted this. He wanted her. During the car ride back, the rain fell harder, pattering against the windows in a soothing rhythm. Silence stretched between them, comfortable yet charged. Finally, Alexander spoke, voice low. "I know there's something you're holding back," he said gently, not accusing but curious. "I can feel it. And I need you to know, whatever it is, it won't change how I feel about tonight. Or about you." Olivia's fingers tightened on her bag. The envelope, the The $20 plan, the mission, all pressed in her mind. And yet, the sincerity in his voice, the intensity of his gaze, made her consider something daring: trust. She exhaled, her voice trembling slightly. "It's complicated," she admitted. "I came here with a plan that wasn't honest. But being around you, it made me rethink everything." Alexander reached over, gently brushing her hand. "Then don't think about the plan," he said softly. "Think about this moment. About us. Right now, nothing else matters." The forced proximity had broken down barriers. Their hearts, previously constrained by fear and circumstance, now had room to speak, even in small tentative ways. Each lingering touch, each glance, and each shared laugh brought them closer to acknowledging a truth neither had been ready to face before. Their connection was real, and it was undeniable. Have you ever been forced into a situation where being close to someone made you confront your true feelings? How did it change your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. The weekend after the gala, Alexander invited Olivia to his office to discuss a potential project, a collaboration he claimed would benefit both their careers. She agreed, unsure if the invitation was purely professional or if he was testing her, probing for honesty. As they entered his office, the atmosphere was unexpectedly intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but the real weight of the room was in the vulnerability hanging between them. Olivia felt her heart quicken. Every time she was alone with Alexander, her secret, the $20 mission, her initial plan to sabotage him, pressed against her conscience like a stone in her chest. Alexander offered her coffee, a simple gesture, but one that carried quiet attentiveness. "Before we talk business," he began softly, "I want to know more about you. Not the part you show the world, the part you keep hidden." Olivia froze, her fingers tightening around the cup. He wasn't asking about her education, her skills, or her work experience. He wanted to see her. All of her. She hesitated, guilt and fear clawing at her, but the sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. She began, voice barely above a whisper, "I grew up, struggling. My mother left when I was little. My father worked long hours just to keep the lights on. I had to learn early how to survive, how to take care of my younger brother. I've made choices I'm not proud of, choices driven by necessity, not morality." Alexander listened silently, leaning back in his chair, allowing the words to hang between them. There was no judgment, no interruption, just presence. Olivia's vulnerability was raw and disarming. For the first time, she felt that her past, her mistakes, even her mission, could exist without condemnation. "I see you," Alexander finally said, voice gentle but firm. "Not just the struggles, but the strength it took to endure them. Most people would judge. I admire your resilience." Tears pricked her eyes, unbidden. No one had ever looked at her like that, not with understanding, not with such quiet respect. She realized that the mask she had carried for so long, pride, toughness, guardedness, was unnecessary here. And for a fleeting moment, she considered revealing everything: the $20, the plan, the mission that had started this whirlwind. Meanwhile, Alexander carried a burden of his own, one he rarely shared. After Olivia had spoken, he hesitated, then decided to open a part of himself he usually reserved for solitude. "I wasn't always in control," he admitted, gaze distant. "I lost my parents young, inherited a company I didn't feel ready to manage, and learned to rely on wealth and power to shield myself. Relationships were complicated. People see the billionaire, not the person behind the title. I've been hurt, and I've built walls around myself that I didn't think anyone could break." Olivia's eyes softened. She could see the loneliness etched in his features, the vulnerability he rarely showed. Her own walls began to crumble further. She understood now that he, too, carried scars, that beneath the tailored suits and polished demeanor, he was human, capable of pain, longing, and love. The conversation deepened, stories overlapping, revealing unexpected parallels. Olivia admitted her fear of being judged for her upbringing, Alexander confessed his fear of being unloved for his wealth and status. Together, they realized that their walls, built for protection, were slowly dissolving in the presence of someone who genuinely cared. Yet, just as trust began to blossom, a subtle tension surfaced. Olivia's secret mission, the very reason she had come, loomed in her pocket, metaphorically and literally. The $20 envelope, the assignment, had not disappeared. And now, as she felt the pull toward Alexander, guilt threatened to undo everything they were building. Later that evening, Alexander invited her to walk in the nearby park, a place he often visited to think. Rain had left the pathways damp, and the smell of earth mixed with blooming flowers in the cool night air. Silence stretched between them, heavy yet comforting. Olivia finally spoke, voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to confess," she said. "Something I should have told you from the start." Alexander stopped, turning toward her with a calm expression, though curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Whatever it is, you can tell me," he said gently. She took a deep breath. "I wasn't supposed to meet you like this. I was paid to sabotage the date. $20. That was my plan. Her voice broke, tears brimming. "I never wanted to. But then I met you, and it became impossible." The confession hung in the air, sharp and raw. Olivia waited, expecting anger, betrayal, or disappointment. But Alexander's response surprised her. He stepped closer, his eyes softening. "I won't lie, it could have hurt me," he admitted. "But the truth is, I feel the same pull toward you that you've described. And knowing this doesn't change the way I see you. It only proves that your heart matters more than a plan, a dollar, or circumstance." Olivia blinked, overwhelmed by relief and a burgeoning hope she hadn't dared to feel. Her fear, though not gone, had been replaced by the realization that connection, honesty, and vulnerability could be stronger than any mission or mistake. They walked on, side by side, closer now than before. Every step, every glance, every shared word deepened the bond that had begun weeks ago. Secrets had been unveiled, past wounds exposed, yet instead of creating distance, it had brought them together. Olivia realized that the mission, the $20, and the deceit were no longer the center of her life. Alexander was. Alexander, too, felt a shift. Trust, previously fragile, had strengthened. He could see her courage, her vulnerability, and her heart in ways he had never imagined. And in that moment, he knew that love, unexpected, complicated, and imperfect, had begun to root itself deeply in both of them. It started as an ordinary Monday morning. Olivia arrived at Alexander's office to finalize a minor project proposal, confident in the progress they had made over the past weeks. The emotional closeness, the trust, and the budding love had made her feel invincible, untouchable, even after the revelations of her mission. But the world had other plans. As she entered the office, Olivia noticed the tense atmosphere immediately. Alexander was speaking with his assistant, voices low but urgent. Papers scattered across the desk, and there was a subtle undercurrent of frustration that made her stomach twist. Before she could intervene, Alexander noticed her and forced a smile. "Olivia, can you give me a moment?" he asked, though his eyes were clouded with worry. She nodded, heart tightening. Something was off. Later, Alexander returned to her side, but the expression on his face was unreadable. "I need to tell you something," he began cautiously, clearly weighing each word. Olivia's pulse quickened. She braced herself for bad news, her mind racing with possibilities. Was it a project issue? A misunderstanding? Or worse, had he discovered something about her past she hadn't confessed? Alexander exhaled, leaning against the desk. "There's been an issue with the investors. Someone has misrepresented some information regarding your role in the project. They're questioning your credibility, and it's caused doubts about your position here." Olivia's heart sank. "What? But I've done everything accurately," she protested, disbelief coloring her voice. "I know," Alexander said, frustration flickering across his features. but the perception is causing problems. And I need to protect the company. He hesitated, clearly struggling. I can't risk making a personal decision that jeopardizes business. Olivia felt a wave of helplessness crash over her. After everything, the honesty, the emotional trust, the shared vulnerability, suddenly it seemed as if the world wanted to pull them apart. She wanted to scream, to demand understanding, but Alexander's cautious distance cut deeper than any confrontation ever could. Alexander. She began, but he held up a hand. I'm sorry, Olivia. I care about you, but I can't. Not right now. I need clarity. And this puts everything in question. The words hit her like a cold wave. She felt betrayed, not by Alexander, but by the situation, the cruel timing, and the harsh realities of his world. She retreated, emotionally and physically, needing space to process the shock and hurt. Later, as she walked the streets alone, rain dripping from her hair, Olivia reflected on the fragility of the connection they had built. Every shared laugh, every moment of vulnerability, every tender glance, it now felt like it could crumble in an instant. She realized that love, even when real, was vulnerable to external forces and misunderstandings. Meanwhile, Alexander wrestled with his own torment. He wanted to reach for Olivia, to reassure her, to bridge the gap. But professional obligations, investor scrutiny, and the fear of making the wrong choice held him back. The thought of losing her, of pushing her away because of circumstances beyond their control, gnawed at him. He replayed their shared moments, their laughter, the quiet intensity of their conversations, and the undeniable chemistry that had bloomed. Every memory made the distance between them more unbearable, yet he couldn't act without risking everything he had built. The shatterpoint deepened when a third party, the ambitious, envious assistant, spread rumors to the press about Olivia's supposed incompetence. Headlines misrepresented her intentions, suggesting she had manipulated Alexander to gain leverage. Olivia, unaware of the origins, was blindsided by the scandal, her credibility questioned publicly. She felt the sting of humiliation, betrayal, and fear. Her carefully guarded dignity now seemed fragile, and the world's judgment threatened to overwhelm her. Alexander, too, was blindsided by the betrayal of someone he trusted. He confronted the assistant privately, but the damage had been done. The doubt and scrutiny had already seeped into Olivia's mind, amplifying the distance that circumstances had forced between them. That evening, Olivia received a message from Alexander. We need space. I can't protect you from everything, and right now, we both need to think. Her chest tightened. Space. Distance. Words that felt like walls being erected between them. She wanted to reach out, to argue, to confess that the rumors were false, but the fear of rejection and further misunderstanding paralyzed her. She sat in her small apartment, staring at the city lights, replaying their moments together. The laughter, the trust, the shared vulnerability, all at risk of disappearing. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry, the emotional weight of the shatterpoint pressing on her chest. Alexander, alone in his office, felt a similar ache. He wanted to call her, to tell her the truth, to reassure her that he still believed in her, in them, but his pride, the external pressures, and the need to maintain composure kept him silent. He wondered if the distance would destroy the fragile bond they had built. In the silence, both realized a painful truth: love, even genuine, could be tested by circumstance, deception, and miscommunication. And yet, in the depth of that pain, a stubborn ember remained, a hope that if they faced the shatterpoint honestly, they could overcome it. The days following the scandal stretched long and heavy. Olivia moved through her routine almost mechanically, her mind replaying Alexander's words, "We need space." The phrase had become a mantra, echoing through her thoughts like a taunt. Every memory of him, the warmth in his eyes, the comfort of his laughter, the gentle moments they had shared, pulled at her heart, refusing to let her stay distant for long. Yet the fear lingered. Fear of judgment, fear of disappointment, and most painfully, fear that her secret mission had doomed them from the start. Olivia wrestled with a question she could no longer avoid. Was she willing to risk everything? Pride, reputation, stability, for love? Alexander, in his penthouse office overlooking the city skyline, faced the same inner turmoil. He replayed the scandal, the miscommunication, and his own hesitation. Every instinct screamed at him to maintain distance, to protect his heart and the company. But the pull toward Olivia was undeniable, growing stronger with each quiet moment, each memory of her courage, warmth, and honesty. He realized that avoiding the choice would be a loss in itself, a loss of love, trust, and the possibility of something extraordinary. And so, with deliberate resolve, he made a decision. Olivia sat in a quiet cafe, nursing a cup of coffee she barely tasted, when her phone buzzed. The message was simple. "Meet me tonight. No distractions. Just us." Her heart skipped. It was him. Her mind raced. Hope, fear, excitement, and uncertainty collided in a storm of emotion. She hesitated only for a moment before replying, "I'll be there." That evening, the city streets glistened with reflections from the recent rain. Olivia arrived at the secluded park where they had first begun to connect, memories of that initial encounter flooding back. Alexander was already there, waiting beneath the soft glow of a lamp post, his figure illuminated like a beacon against the night. For a moment, they simply stood, studying each other in silence. Words were unnecessary. The choice had already been made in their hearts. It was a matter of courage, of reaching across the space that fear and circumstance had created. Alexander was the first to break the silence. "I shouldn't have let the scandal, or anything else, come between us," he said, voice steady but vulnerable. "I've realized that protecting my heart doesn't mean shutting out the people who matter. Olivia, I choose you. I choose us." Tears pricked her eyes, but she smiled, a mixture of relief, love, and wonder. "Alexander. I was afraid too," she admitted. "Afraid that my past, my mistakes, my mission, that they would define me. But being away from you made me realize something important. I don't want to lose what we have. I choose you too. I choose us." The words hung in the air, electric and liberating. They stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking until it disappeared entirely. Hands intertwined, hearts beating in sync, they embraced, an embrace that spoke of forgiveness, courage, and the triumph of love over fear. Every touch was a reaffirmation. Every glance, a silent promise. Olivia felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by trust, connection, and the unspoken certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Alexander rested his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of her hair, the warmth of her presence. "I know it won't always be easy," he whispered, "but I don't want to face life without you by my side." "I don't want to either," she replied, voice soft but unwavering. "We've been tested, we've stumbled, but love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard." For the first time since their journey began, both felt a profound sense of clarity. The choice had been made, not a decision of convenience, but of courage, vulnerability, and commitment. They had faced fear, pride, and misunderstanding, and had emerged stronger united. They walked together through the quiet streets, rain-slicked and shimmering, hands clasped, laughter and quiet conversation blending seamlessly. Every step reaffirmed their decision. Every shared smile reinforced the bond they had fought to preserve. That night, under the soft glow of street lamps, Alexander paused. "I want you to know something," he said gently. "I've never met anyone who made me feel so alive, so understood, and so brave. You've changed my world, Olivia. I love you." Olivia's heart soared. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've never felt this way about anyone. Ever. Not even close. And I never want to let it go." Alexander leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft, tender, and filled with the weight of every struggle, every secret, and every choice that had led them here. It was a kiss of victory, love triumphant over doubt, fear, and circumstance. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Alexander's penthouse, painting the room in golden hues. Olivia sat at the breakfast table, her hand intertwined with Alexander's, the tension and distance of the past weeks replaced by a profound sense of peace. For the first time, the future didn't feel uncertain, it felt alive, full of possibility, and shared. The scandal, the misunderstanding, the mission that had begun as a cruel joke, all of it felt like distant echoes compared to the clarity of the present. They had faced fear, vulnerability, and the trials of trust, and emerged stronger together. Olivia sipped her coffee, her gaze soft as she watched Alexander move around the kitchen with ease, laughing at a minor spill that would have previously sent her into panic. Alexander looked up, catching her eyes. "Do you remember the day we first met?" he asked, voice gentle, filled with nostalgia. Olivia smiled, the memory vivid. "The garden. You were reviewing reports, and I accidentally tripped over the hose while trying to water the flowers." He chuckled. "And you laughed in a way that made me realize I hadn't been breathing properly in years." Her laughter rang through the apartment, light and unburdened. "You fell in love with me at first sight, didn't you?" she teased, raising an eyebrow. "Maybe," he admitted with a grin. "Or maybe I just realized that life had finally given me someone worth noticing." The ease between them, the playful banter, and the quiet understanding marked a new chapter in their journey. Their love was no longer tentative or fragile, it was real, enduring, and unshakable. Weeks passed, and Olivia settled into her new role at Alexander's company. Far from the mission, far from the $20 assignment that had sparked their story, she thrived. Her talent, intelligence, and creativity were recognized and celebrated, not questioned or undermined. Alexander, ever supportive, ensured she was seen for her skills, her vision, and her integrity. Their relationship deepened in subtle ways: shared breakfasts, whispered secrets late at night, quiet walks along the city streets, and moments of laughter in the midst of corporate chaos. They navigated challenges together, proving that love was not only about grand gestures but about trust, patience, and shared victories. One afternoon, Alexander surprised Olivia with a visit to her childhood neighborhood. The streets were familiar, worn with memories of hardship and resilience. Olivia's heart swelled as she walked the path of her youth, hand in hand with Alexander. She shared stories of her mother, her brother, and the struggles that had shaped her, no longer with shame or fear, but with pride in her survival and growth. Alexander listened intently, asking questions, offering support, and showing a genuine interest in the life that had shaped the woman he loved. He realized that her past, once a source of guilt for Olivia, had become a testament to her strength and courage. And in that realization, he loved her even more, deeply, wholly, without reservation. Evenings were often spent in quiet reflection. On one such night, they sat on the balcony of Alexander's penthouse, the city lights twinkling like stars below. Olivia leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You've changed my life," she whispered, voice soft but certain. "I never imagined love could feel like this, honest, safe, and real. Even with all the chaos, all the mistakes, I feel like I've finally found my home." Alexander kissed the top of her head, a tender gesture filled with warmth. "You are my home, Olivia. You've brought color, courage, and laughter into a life that was once ruled by control and solitude. I don't want a single day without you by my side." They sat in silence, the weight of the past lifted, replaced by gratitude and joy. Their journey, from mission to misunderstanding, from resistance to choice, had forged a love that was resilient and unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, Alexander planned a quiet celebration, a gesture not of grandeur, but of heartfelt commitment. On a rainy afternoon, much like the one that had first cemented their bond, he led Olivia to a small, intimate garden. Candles flickered softly, flowers glistened with raindrops, and the air was rich with the scent of earth and blossoms. "I know we've been through challenges," he began, voice steady but filled with emotion. "But every step, every obstacle, every moment has brought me to this point, to you. Olivia, I love you. Will you marry me?" Olivia's eyes brimmed with tears, a mixture of joy, relief, and disbelief. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, Alexander. I will." The embrace that followed was more than a kiss, it was a seal of their journey, a celebration of trust, resilience, and unexpected love. Friends, family, and colleagues joined them later, witnessing not just a union of two people, but the triumph of love over fear, misunderstanding, and circumstance. Months later, in the quiet moments of domestic bliss, Olivia and Alexander reflected on their journey. The $20 mission that had begun as a joke seemed almost comical now, a reminder of how fate and courage could turn the smallest decisions into life-changing events. Alexander held Olivia's hand, eyes shining with gratitude. "We've been tested," he said, "but we've come out stronger. And the love we've built, it's real. It's ours." Olivia smiled, leaning against him. "Yes. Unexpected, messy, beautiful, and ours. Always ours." They kissed gently, the promise of the future unfolding before them. In that moment, they understood that love, true, lasting, and unexpected, was not about perfection, but about courage, trust, and choosing each other every single day. Have you ever experienced love that surprised you, defied expectations, or changed your life completely? Share your story in the comments below. Let's celebrate the power of unexpected love.